So my name is Noelle. I am part of the family here at Rise Church, and my husband Mark and I, along with the wonderful and loving Paul and Julie Hannon, lead one of the communities here at Rise. And I was very honored when Lindy asked me to speak on this topic because it is something that I believe in and something that has made a profound impact on my own life. And so I'm excited to share this morning. I have actually been involved in communities for about 36 years. Since as a 10-year-old child, my neighbors first told me about Jesus and invited me to a midweek youth Bible study group where I came along and met Jesus in the car park after that Bible study group. So, and I've been involved in communities ever since then. Though I was reflecting, they've been called a lot of different names through the years. Bible study groups, home fellowship groups, kinship groups. I never loved that one. It's a little bit Southern American. I don't know if that one ever made it here. But whatever the name was, it was always the same concept. A small group of people coming together to study God's Word, and a safe place to ask our questions, because the Word can be confusing. A safe place to say, I don't know what this means, or I'm not sure about this, and to wrestle it through together. A place where we can share honestly about our struggles and ask for prayer and pray for one another. A place where we eat. The food in Rise communities is especially delicious. Our community is sharing a meal this week. So, if you're looking to join a community and you're free Tuesday nights, it's a good week to join. It's always a good week to join. Sundays are so important and critical for our growth and health. But meeting in a smaller group, a community group, really encourages us and helps grow us in a different way that is also essential for our health as believers. We're going to look at a passage in the book of Hebrews and look at what it says about why it is so important that we meet together and we grow together and we encourage one another. So if you have your Bibles or your phones, turn to Hebrews 10, 23 to 25. Otherwise, it'll be back on the screen. I'm reading from the English Standard Version. So that's Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 to 25. It says, "Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." So the author of Hebrews, and we don't know who that is. It may be the Apostle Paul, who wrote a lot of the New Testament. It may not. Scholars are uncertain on that. But whoever it is, the author is speaking to believers who are suffering very real persecution. They're being persecuted by Nero. They're being persecuted by the Jews. Their life is hard, and they are struggling. And he starts this passage by saying, hold unswervingly, hold unwaveringly to your hope in God, because he is faithful. And then goes on to talk about how it is absolutely essential that they don't neglect meeting together, but that they are connecting and encouraging one another. I love verse 24. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. In the New Living Translation, it says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Some translations say encourage. Those are really nice, gentle words, motivate, encourage. This word is actually not a gentle word. It's actually a really strong word. I don't speak Greek, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but I think behind us we're going to have the definition. If not, that's okay. I will read it to you. But it means stimulation, provocation, irritation, angry dispute. A provocation which literally jabs or cuts someone, so they must respond. How many of us can relate to having relationships like that in our lives that literally jab and cut us so we must respond, even when we go into them saying, this time I'm not going to react? We talked about Mother's Day last week. I think all moms in the room can relate to that. This time, I'm not going to lose it this time, but then it just jabs and cuts, and yeah, we go from there. So generally, this word is used in a negative context, though in this passage, it's used in a very positive way. The only other place, interestingly, that this word is used in the New Testament is in the book of Acts, when Paul and Barnabas argue so sharply about John Mark that they actually part ways. So when Hebrews tells us to consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, it's exhorting us to love others in a way that provokes them. This is not a wishy-washy, I pass you for 2 minutes one morning, hey, how you going? Oh, yeah, work's a bit stressful. How about you? Oh, yeah, kids are a bit tricky. Have a good week. It's not that kind of relationship. It's a relationship where we are sharing deeply and connecting in a way that motivates us to step into the fullness of what God is calling us to. I was thinking about in my own life, there were so many examples to choose from. Actually, the hardest thing about preparing this message was narrowing down what I would share, because as I reflect on my 35 years in communities, I have been so impacted by the way others have loved and encouraged me. But I'm going to share just a few with you this morning. I was thinking about when we were first married and we were involved in a community with other young couples. And we would look at what the Word said about marriage and healthy relationships, and we would encourage one another to live that out. We would hold each other accountable. We would be honest about, because it's a lot of adjustment when you start out in marriage. And learning to do that together and encouraging one another to live in the way that honored God, and encouraging each other as couples to honor our spouse in a way that honored God. And this year we will celebrate, later in the year, 24 years of marriage. And yes, it has been a blessing. But we would both tell you that community group was key in building the healthy foundation that our marriage still stands on today. It spurred us on, incited us to love and good works. I was very excited to see Jenny and Nathan Driver here this morning, and I was thinking about how doing many years of community with Karen Driver before they moved away. I had the privilege, I think until they moved, all of our years from when we moved to Australia in this church, I had the privilege of being in community with Karen Driver, and the way that she lived her faith so earnestly inspired me to make sure that I was following God hard. The way that she gave everything in obedience to God inspired, encouraged, and jabbed me to follow God the same. It's a precious thing when we share life together. So let us consider how to spur one another on to love and good works. And then verse 25, not neglecting to meet together is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So not neglecting to meet together. Think of that here, the way it's used, it's like you would think of a child who was neglected. I work in well-being in a school, and it is a heartbreaking thing to see a child that is neglected, but in my role, to have the privilege of being able to encourage them can make a massive difference in their lives, even if it doesn't change the situation. So that's what we're talking about here in verse 25, not neglecting to meet together, because that leaves us isolated, but encouraging one another. And community, being involved in a community, provides us such a precious opportunity to share our struggles, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, and to encourage one another. It's a place where it's safe to be vulnerable and honest. When I was 19 years old, I had just come back from serving in an organization called Youth with a Mission in Russia and India, and I was praying about what God had next for me. And I felt like he said Australia, which was scary because I didn't know anyone here and I didn't know anything about Australia. But I prayed, I contacted Youth with a Mission, and I made a plan to come here. So I spent a year in Cleveland working and saving money and speaking in churches and building relationships with churches in preparation to come. And when it was just about time for me to leave for Australia, I was terrified, and I didn't want to come. And I didn't want to admit that to anyone because everyone that knew me had been encouraging me and excited for me. And I went to my Bible study group one evening, and when it came time for prayer, I started weeping, not crying, weeping. And I said, I don't want to go to Australia. I'm afraid. I don't want to go. I want to stay here. And I can remember the feeling like it was yesterday of them rushing to surround me and praying for me and sharing words of encouragement and sharing Bible verses and speaking into my life in a way that so encouraged me when I was feeling isolated, so encouraged me and motivated me to follow the path that God had for me, even though it was scary, to step out in it into all that God had for me, and I'm so grateful for them. You know, I've got my phone down in my handbag there where I was sitting, and in it there is a note from February of last year, where at my precious community here, and I'm looking at some of the precious women that were there that night, we divided into men and women when it came time to pray. We don't usually do that, but we did that night. And of the women that were there, we all took turns praying for one another. And we shared words of encouragement. And if someone felt like God gave them a picture or a Bible verse or a word, they shared that as well. And I still have the notes in my phone of the things that those precious women shared with me that evening. And a year later, just over a year later, I'm still in a similar season, and those words are still such an encouragement to me. So verse 24 and 25 are why we don't neglect meeting together. Now I want to look at the how we spur one another on to love and good works. And the really good news is it's not in our own strength. The 9.5 chapters of Hebrews before the passage that I just read to you, like the biggest focus, I would say, of those chapters is how Jesus is the great high priest who has made a way for us to be in relationship with the Father. It's God who does the work. It's God who equips us, and Jesus has made the way. Pastor Tim is in the middle of a series on unity. It started 2 weeks ago before Mother's Day, so if you didn't hear the first week, I would encourage you to jump onto YouTube and watch or listen to that message. But I'm going to look at this morning one of the passages that Pastor Tim looked at that week. So if you would turn in your phone or Bible, or I think it'll be on the screen behind me, to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 to 12. A spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other. To one person, the Spirit gives the ability to give wise advice. To another, the same Spirit gives a message of special knowledge. The same Spirit gives great faith to another. And to someone else, the Spirit gives the gift of healing. He gives one person the power to perform miracles, and another the ability to prophesy. He gives someone else the ability to discern whether a message is from the Spirit of God or from another spirit. Still another person is given the ability to speak in unknown languages, while another is given the ability to interpret what is said. It is the one and only Spirit who distributes all these gifts. He alone decides which gift each person should have. The human body has many parts, but the many parts make up one whole body. So it is with the body of Christ. God has uniquely and specifically equipped each of you. That was the very first verse that I read there. A spiritual gift is given to each of us. Can I hear you say each of us? Each of us. That is awesome. And I have such a sense that there's someone here, more than someone, who is thinking, I really don't bring anything to the table. I don't need to go to a community because I have nothing to offer. And if I did go to a community, I would make sure that I was quiet and didn't speak because I would just embarrass myself because I have nothing to contribute. And I want to tell you that that is biblically untrue. You have been specifically and uniquely equipped by God. And what you bring is necessary for the body. It is necessary on a Sunday morning when we come together, and it is necessary in a small group. And if you are not there, not only are you left neglected and isolated from being able to be encouraged, but others miss out on what you bring. And you may be thinking, I'm not like Pastor Tim, I'm not like Lindy or Keith. What you bring is unique. I was thinking about 2 weeks ago, I was making a Mexican feast. I like to cook Mexican. It was just for our family. And I was making a Mexican salad to go with the meal, and it had a cilantro lime dressing. And I made the salad, I had the meat in the slow cooker, everything was ready. It came time to make the dressing. I didn't have lime juice. Now, I had been feeling still unwell from being sick, so I was really tired. I got home from work, and as I do, and most people who know me well know this about me, straight into my pajamas and fluffy bathrobe. So I didn't have lime juice, and I was thinking, I just don't have it in me to go to the store. And my only child who was at home had an assignment due, so I couldn't ask them to run to the store. So I'm searching everywhere. I was sure I had lime juice. There was no lime juice. Thought, I have lemon juice. I could make it with lemon juice. No one would notice the difference. I mean, they wouldn't complain anyway, but they wouldn't notice, but it just wouldn't be quite the same. It just wouldn't be as good as it could be. We'd still eat it. We'd still be fed, but it wouldn't be the same. Thankfully, though, I remembered that I had a fresh lime, so fear not, it was all okay. But I want to tell you this morning, if you feel you have nothing to give, I want you to remember that you are the lime juice. And if you don't come, community will still happen. Sunday morning church will still happen. If you come along and sit back and don't participate and think I've got nothing to offer, a service will still happen, but it will not be the same. It will not be what it could be unless you are involved in exercising the gift that God has uniquely given you. I'd like to invite the worship team to come up. Your gift is essential, and if you think, I don't even know what my gift is, community is a great place. Come along, let your community leader know that's how you feel, and they will talk with you, and they will pray with you and help you discover how God has equipped you and who he's made you to be, and it becomes a really safe place to exercise that gift. We can pray together in community, and prayer is one of those things. Prayer is just talking to God, but it can be really scary. Especially if you're new in the faith. The thought of praying can be scary, and coming along and hearing other people pray and getting a chance to give it a go in that environment, it's a safe place to do that. It's also a safe place to grow in hearing God's voice. Hearing God's voice is a skill that we practice and grow in, and nobody gets it right 100% of the time. And it's a safe place to say, this is what I think God is saying, and to have people who will pray with you and encourage you in that. It's a safe place to share what's going on in your own life, because just like the believers in Hebrews, People now, we still face tough stuff, and we know that. This has been an especially tough season in our world, and to be able to come along and be encouraged is incredibly significant to our lives. So I want to encourage you, if you're not part of a community, to go back to that red barrel at the back after the service and speak to the beautiful, friendly people that will be there. Communities, as Pastor Lindy said, we've got daytime communities, we've got evening communities. They meet on different days. We want to help you find the right fit for you. And you don't just have to go to one. You can try out different ones and find your fit. We just want you to be comfortable and feel safe to grow. Thank you for listening this morning. It was a privilege to share with you. Our worship team is going to lead us now. God bless you and have a wonderful week.